everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today to Mid-Level Use e-courses. I have with me Alex Fisher with Thompson Burton, and she's here today to talk about prescribing medications to friends and family. Alex deals a lot with this. She works with licensing and prescribing issues for nurse practitioners, so she's got some really good insight into what nurse practitioners are allowed to do in this realm and the consequences of prescribing inappropriately. So I just have a couple statistics. I think this is really very common. Your friend, for example, asks you as a nurse practitioner to write a prescription for their son who's got an ear infection so they can avoid a trip to the doctor, for example. And about 52 to 84% of physicians, depending on who you ask, say that they've even prescribed for themselves, and nearly 100% say they've kind of off the record prescribed for friends and family. So this is a real issue. And what do nurse practitioners see from the Board of Nursing in regards to this?
So I think the Board of Nursing is aware of this statistic and probably aware that they themselves have probably written a prescription for a friend or family member at some point. For most states, it's not in the regulations or law that you can't write a prescription for a friend or family member. However, what the law says is that when you're writing prescriptions, you have to document, and you need to have a complete patient record for everyone you write a prescription for. So usually when you're writing a prescription on the side in the elementary school parking lot, you don't have a patient record on that person.
Right.
You're not taking their vital signs. So that's really the concern from the Board of Nursing. From what I've seen, however, they're not pursuing, taking away someone's license for writing a prescription for antibiotics to their best friend's son. Their real concern is the writing of controlled substances.
Okay. And another thing I guess I've also seen in looking at state laws regarding this is that states typically will, quote, discourage it or say it's okay in emergency situations, but they don't strictly prohibit it except in the controlled substances realm. So it's technically not illegal, but it's not really looked highly upon. So, and again, the documentation, if you don't have a documented record of that patient-provider interaction, even though it might be your best friend's son, it's outside of your scope of practice. So definitely something to keep in mind the next time somebody asks you for a prescription on the side.
And it's just not best practices. Erin, we were talking earlier, and a lot of times my advice is ways to avoid having discipline on your license. But I think particularly in this case, it's not just you avoiding discipline on your license, it's really you providing good patient care. Because
Right.
if you're prescribing to someone without taking their vital signs, without knowing what other medication they're on or what they're allergic to, you could really end up doing someone not only a disservice, but possibly harming a patient, which is
Right.
obviously the last thing any of us would want to do.
Right. Well, and along those lines, too, the government sees that once you've written a prescription for a patient, whether it's on the record or off the record, you officially entered into a legal patient-provider relationship with that person. So if there are any consequences of writing that prescription, for example, if the medication caused drowsiness and the person got in a car accident, there was an allergic reaction or an adverse medication reaction, you would be held legally liable, which is something that isn't common, but you certainly want to consider and take seriously as you're writing prescriptions for people that you know. So if, for example, you did get in trouble from the state for writing too many prescriptions for friends and family members, not documenting appropriately, what would the consequences of that be?
So the consequences can really vary. If this was a one-time incident of writing a prescription, let's say for pain medication for someone, that could be a reprimand on your license, and continuing education, maybe related to professional boundaries, proper prescribing. If you have written prescriptions for 15 different friends over the last 3 years for their Adderall and their pain medication and antibiotics and a myriad of things, the board is going to be very concerned. And I've seen in scenarios like that where a nurse practitioner's license was even revoked. So it can be very serious.
Right. So do you have any advice you can offer nurse practitioners if they do prescribe medications to friends or family members, as this is allowed by most states? What should they do to really protect themselves?
Documentation.
Okay.
Like we've talked about before, it's the main way to protect yourself. And again, provide that really fantastic patient care. Even if it's, kind of hasty documentation, doing your best to have a patient record on anyone you're treating as a patient, documenting any intervention, anytime you treat them, the reason for what you're prescribing.
Right. Okay. And I guess one more thing to add is also that federal law says that the prescribing of controlled substances must take place within a strict patient-provider relationship. So if you are going to write, a prescription for a friend or family member and document it, it certainly cannot be a controlled substance unless you're in that traditional practice setting, and it really could be described as a bona fide patient-provider relationship. So be careful, and if you do run into any problems with your prescribing practices, Alex can definitely answer any questions you might have, and she's happy to help. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Erin.